Even those who haven't read the works of Roald Dahl are at least a little familiar with them, thanks to the popular movie adaptations of his books. Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, Witches, and Matilda, to name a few, have practically raised kids over the generations. For 90s kids like me, the movie Matilda stands out as one of the best, but there is a version that better represents the original Dahl novel. Although the 1996 movie Matilda, which stars Mara Wilson in the titular role, was a fun fantasy movie that I remember fondly from my childhood, Matilda the musical is a superior adaptation of the book. In particular, the 2022 adaptation of the musical, Roald Dahl's Matilda the Musical, streaming on Netflix is a must-see, and while it does change some things from the book, it's a much better representation of its story and themes than the 90s film. How the Matilda musical is more true to the book. It faithfully shows how Matilda gets her powers. Naturally, a stage or film adaptation of a popular novel is going to have changes. Yet the changes in 1996 Matilda are so far removed from the original source, it's almost unrecognizable. Matilda the musical does a much better job not only of staying true to the original story but also to Roald Dahl's intended themes. Firstly, while it may not seem like much of a change, the Matilda story takes place in the UK, while the 1996 movie moves the story to America. This normally wouldn't be much of an issue, except that the original novel is so heavily steeped in British culture. There's a palpable difference in tone by having Matilda and the other characters be American, and while it doesn't necessarily hurt the 96 adaptation, the musical version being a distinctly British production feels much more authentic to Dahl's work. Another major difference from the novel is that the 1996 movie almost completely removed the character of Mrs. Phelps, who shows up only briefly. She plays a much larger part in the Matilda book as the librarian who encourages Matilda's love of reading and helps her to find even more advanced works of literature. Mrs. Phelps is brought back into the musical version, playing a much bigger role in the story than even in the novel. However, by giving Mrs. Phelps a more prominent role, it enhances the book's theme of encouraging kids to read. One of the biggest ways Matilda the musical is more true to the book is in how Matilda's powers are represented. In the film, Matilda gets her powers when her dad makes her angry, then she uses them to make objects in the house move and dance around in a whimsical way. It makes a memorable sequence, but it's not how it happened in the book. The musical has her telekinetic abilities manifesting when the adults in her life are mistreating her and other kids, which is more in line with the novel, and there's much less humor involved. Matilda the movie focuses too much on her parents. It chooses Danny DeVito and Rhea Perlman's comedic chemistry over the book's themes. Danny DeVito, Mara Wilson, and Rhea Perlman in Matilda. There's hardly a better on-screen pairing than Danny DeVito and Rhea Perlman, who are absolutely hilarious together in the cast of 1996 Matilda. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, but with so much of the movie putting Matilda's parents in the spotlight, it takes away from the true spirit of Dahl's book. Most of the scenes with Perlman and DeVito are played for laughs, and while the book does somewhat paint the parents in a comedic tone, the movie's focus on them takes us away from the book's more important themes. In Dahl's original story, Matilda's parents aren't nearly as central as in the 1996 film. The musical does this differently, staying more true to the book by having them present, but not hogging the storyline. Yes, they are horrible people, and Matilda finds ways of pranking her dad in order to let off some steam, just like in the movie, but the film pays far too much attention to those characters. The real conflict that the book and the musical focuses on is Matilda's battle with Miss Trunchbull, the true villain of the story. The musical is a better portrayal of Matilda versus Trunchbull. She's only a secondary antagonist in the 1996 movie. Miss Trunchbull is one of the biggest, scariest, and meanest villains in all of children's movies and literature. As a woman who unapologetically hates children, she represents every adult who has ever been cruel to kids. Yet, even with her terrifying demeanor, the 1996 movie falls short of accurately representing the conflict between her and Matilda. One of the biggest themes in the Matilda novel is about young people finding the bravery and conviction to stand up to bullies, especially grown-up ones. The musical and 2022 musical movie deliver these themes brilliantly, as Matilda finds the courage to stand up against Miss Trunchbull. When Matilda is the first student to tell Miss Trunchbull no, all the other students are inspired by her bravery and begin to rebel. Not only does Matilda stand up for herself, but for all of the kids at the school, who have long suffered Trunchbull's injustice.